All right, so the meeting is now being recorded, and I would like to welcome everybody to the Instructional Design and Learning SIG's webinar, Using Scenarios to Help People Learn. Our speaker, our presenter today is Kim Lindsey, and before I give her formal introduction, I just want to say during the rehearsal and during our phone conversations, I have really enjoyed getting to know Kim. I find that she is smart and funny, which is kind of a rare combination. We may see her kitty cat, so we are visiting her at her own nest. Kim Lindsey is the e-learning and instructional design manager at Cinecraft Productions in Cleveland, Ohio, and she's a senior STC member. She's held lots of offices and is connected with the Northeast Ohio STC chapter. She's been president, and she's currently the webmaster. So not only is she smart and funny, she's also generous with her time and generous with sharing with the profession, and we just want to thank her a lot. Kim has completed several certificate courses on scenario-based design from industry experts and enthusiastically shares how she has applied what she has learned in real-world projects. So I think everybody sit back and relax. Kim has a lot of things to share. Kim's topic has a lot of related web links, and so one of my jobs is to make sure that the web links get into the chat box, and we will be emailing out the chat box content at the end of the webinar. So I don't know if you can put your hands together. You can see at the top of the screen where you can raise your hand. You can also applaud. So I'm going to applaud Kim.
Yay,
and just
thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here today. I'm real excited to share with you all of the good stuff that I had learned. Scenarios are so wonderful. They're so powerful, and they're really kind of fun too. And they do definitely work with technical content as well as other kinds of soft skills training. As Vicki has said, I am actually a practicing instructional designer. I write storyboards for e-learning all day long. That is my position, and leading project teams. I have, prior to that, I was actually in technical communication. I was a technical writer for a couple of different industries for about 9 years, and I've been in my current job for about almost 6 years now. The examples that you'll see in the class are both from classes that I have taken and the gurus that I follow, and also most of them from my own work at Cinecraft. I can't put the 20-plus hours of instruction that I have had into 1 hour for you guys, but I'll definitely launch you in the right direction, and towards the end we'll talk about where you can go to learn more, the sources that I recommend. The adult learning theory tells us that we don't just use lectures. We have to have interactivity. We have the employees ignored all our lectures. Whatever shall we do? Well, we need to put interactivity in. And scenario-driven design is one of the latest trends, and I say latest. It's really been, at least 2 or 3 years that this has taken off, and all manner of people. That and gamification are the two methods that are most in vogue right now. We want to talk about what is a scenario. Well, I was surprised when I looked up in the dictionaries, the online dictionaries, to find a definition, and they all started. They were just talking about stage plays, and or like a movie script. And I thought, well, scenario's been around as a learning thing for a lot longer than that. So for our purposes, we're going to define it as a story describing a real-life situation with embedded learning points. And that's one of the important parts of it. Ideally, the learning points are embedded right into the story. They're not tacked on. And the other thing that ideally and really is a best practice is that it will show consequences. That if you have it, if the learner is asked to make a choice, they will see the consequences of what would happen if they made that choice in real life. So it's supposed to reflect what would happen really on the job. If you could use the raise hand icon that's there in the top of your screen, if you would like, how many of you have actually seen or are familiar with this book, Made to Stick? If you can find that up there at the top where it has like the little person with their hand raised. So just, click that down arrow and pick the I'm not seeing any hands going up. Maybe this is new to all of you guys. This is there I see one. There's James is raising his hand. The idea, this is actually a marketing book, but I found that it's really, really helpful for TechCom and instructional design as well, because their main point is how do you get people to remember things? How do you present information in a way that it will make it sticky, that it will stick in the person's brain? They have a Onepage QRG on the author's website, and boy, that key is not working. I'm going to have to click these. All right, Onepage QRG that summarizes the whole book, so you don't actually have to read the book. Here's a Onepage QRG that's available for free on their website. But you'll notice that this is supposed to, all right, I guess I can't use the, I'm supposed to be able to have a pointer, and the pointer is
I see it. Yeah, green one.
it? You can see it? I can totally not see it at all. All right.
With the green arrow.
All right. Well, can you see me going around this S here story?
It disappeared now for me.
Oh, okay. Well, I think I'm not going to count on that. Anyway, the last letter in their success acronym is stories. And this is one of the main ways that you can help people to remember things. It makes the information very sticky. Here's another thing. I was wondering also how many of you had follow Carl Kapp's blog. He's one of the thought leaders in instructional design. He heads the IDL program over at Bloomsburg University in Pennsylvania. Anybody follow Carl Kapp? He's the gamification guy. But this is a recent blog post that he had. It's from December, so it's very recent. It's an abstract of a very scholarly type study. But basically, the scholar presents a detailed research and statistics showing that the brain actually, with MRIs or whatever kind of PET scans that they do with people's brains, that they can actually see that stories activate different parts of the brain than information that's presented what they call expositionally, bullet point. So exposition would be bullet points, stories would be a narrative format. And a narrative format, it activates different parts of the brain. We truly are wired for story, and you might have heard of that term as well. So if you want people to remember something and to retain what they learn, some type of story is going to help that happen. So let's look at some different types of scenarios. I don't know how many of you have seen this example, but this is a screenshot from a blog of one of the thought leaders in the field, Kathy Moore, and I did take her scenario design course, and it is excellent, excellent. And the URL for her will be in the chat, and also we'll have that at the end, and so that'll be provided for you. Highly recommended, both her blog and her class. But this is a one-screen scenario. Magda has received a deep prick from, obviously, Magda works in a hospital. What should she do? And it gives you these 4 choices. Now, down at the bottom of the screen, these are very simple, but there are resources that the person can access. They can look at a quick reference guide. They can look at their standard operating procedure. But once you make a selection, it actually tells you, like if you choose the wrong one, Magda gets hepatitis. So there's the consequence. It's a very short story, but it really definitely shows exactly what would happen. So it's a one screen scenario. In stark contrast is this one from another class that I've taken from Ray Jimenez. It's called the Negotiator, and it actually has probably at least 10, if not 20, different questions that you go through. This guy comes out of an alley, approaches you when you're at an ATM in the inner city, and he asks you for money. And what do you do? And you say you have a choice of a couple of different things to say to him, and then he says something back to you, and depending on what you responded, and then you choose from those. And it goes on and on. It's very detailed. And if the end, if you choose wrongly, like I did the first time I did it, he picks up a broken bottle and stabs you. But if you choose the right path, what you find out is that he is a desperate man. He has actually just been robbed himself and left in this alley, and he has a loved one he's trying to get to at the hospital. And he really does need your help, but he's just so desperate. So, I mean, the key, if I had been thinking, is, the title of it is The Negotiator. You don't just do like, I'm afraid I ran away. So this is an example of a very complicated, probably this kind of scenario is better for more soft skills type things. You really do need to consider your audience. What we have found at Cinecraft is we're creating sales training, and our audience for our training materials is salespeople. They are not going to be comfortable. They're not going to want to go through 10 questions and then find out they got it wrong and have to start over. You want to use the shorter ones for something that is more a shorter attention span, or depending on just your average audience personality. Something that's more longer and more detailed, you would use for soft skills. We actually have used it for healthcare situations as well, like responding in a first aid. The next thing I'd like to show you is, where is my actual cursor? There he is.
I see Kitty.
Yes, you do see my kitty. He's right over here. He's not too, hopefully he won't bother me too much. But this is what I would call a linear scenario, because you have a question, then you have several answers, but only one of them is right, and then you're guided right back. No matter what you pick, you're guided straight back to it. I'm very frustrated that I can't use this. Oh, there he is. You're guided straight back into the right path. Now, some of the tool manufacturers will call this branching because it looks like a branch to them. But what this is just a series of multiple choice questions. It's not true branching. In stark contrast is this structure, which is actually a real one created by my coworker Chris Carell for a first aid course. And you start here, and here's your choices, and you go down here, and there's just a lot of different paths. They all end up at one or two of these terminuses. I think this is the right answer, this is a wrong answer. But you can see there's a great deal of variety as far as scenarios. And we will see BranchTrack later on in this course today. Let's see. Now let's go on to look at some examples, and most of these are from my own work. This is a course, it's actually on my company's website, cinecraft.com, under the e-learning topic, and you will be able to actually go through the first part of this course. It was for ACE Hardware. This portion is actually a video that plays, because we are also a video company. And then the learner there's a question, and they're presented with 3 answers. And it's not true branching, because no matter what answer you pick, you are told what you should have picked, and you're guided back onto the correct path. And this is just a progress meter down at the bottom. We actually won a Brandon Hall Bronze Award for this course. So this is very complicated, but it's not true branching. But you do not have to use video in scenarios. This is an example where it's just a character photo on a background. And once again, you have a question, and you choose what you would say back to the person. And this one it was short, maybe 3 question sequences, but this is sales training. So this is a potential customers, and depending on what choices you make in this and the next screens, you either get the sale or you lose business from this customer. So there was true consequences. The next one, this is also from BranchTrack, and we will look at this in the live BranchTrack online later on in this course. But this is another true branching scenario. This is what the person says, and here are your responses. And you'll see here's like a progress meter as far as it goes up when you get a right answer, goes down, and the customer is unhappy when you give a wrong answer. This is a little different. It's story-based. It's not truly a scenario. It's kind of maybe a one-screen scenario. The voiceover tells a story, says this is the project. The bullet points appear, and the learner is supposed to drag the cans of paint that they would want to sell to this customer. And this is one of our I designed this, and it's one of our very important clients. And once they drag all the cans onto the photo, then they click the submit button. Then they find out whether they got it right or not, and they have a couple of chances to do that. So it's not branching, but it is story-based. The next example is, this really doesn't look like a story, does it? These individuals, they actually process paperwork for international trade documentation. And it is the story not of the person so much, but it's the story of a series of documents. What the person has done, they're told like the little part of where the document is and the status of it, and then they are to click this, they're told the story, and then they have to click this area here, and it opens up a series of fake documents that, yes, I created hundreds of these fake documents with fake company names and account numbers and stuff, and the person has to scan this information to say, okay, do the account numbers match? Is something missing? Has it been time and date stamped? Go through all that, and then they go back to the other screen and they click what their answer would be over here, and then they progress through. And some of these had 6 or 8 steps as the documents. So it's actually the story of a document. It is a story, it is a scenario, but it's not so much focused on a character. The last example that I wanted to show is something that I made up, and this is prototype for a project that did not go forward because we couldn't present the information the way the client wanted to. I don't know if any of you can recognize this in the middle of the screen here, but it is Oracle. It's one of the bits and pieces of Oracle, which is extremely powerful, but it's extremely complicated and hard for people to learn to use. We have 2 characters here. We have Justin, the young guy, and we have Betty, who's an older lady, kind of like me. And she's saying, oh, it's just so complicated. And he says, well, but there's all these tricks, that you can do. And she, say, well, custom queries. And then he says, oh, yeah, let me show you. Well, then at that point, it zooms out. The characters disappear. This screen zooms out to be full screen, and it's just a Captivate tutorial. So it's essentially putting a little bit of a story as a shell or like as bookends around a Captivate tutorial. My idea was that the company would release 1 or 2 of these little things a week. It's maybe 30, 40 seconds long, and it just shows one little tiny thing. But then, and they would release those over their intranet, but then you would pop out the Captivate tutorial, since it is a little separate file, and you've got that ready to go to put into your knowledge base, even into online help. So it's kind of a 2-for-1. And I thought the cool thing would be maybe about the third story in, Betty would teach Justin something so that it's not all just one-sided. And you could even bring in a third character if you wanted to. And it would be a little bit of a PR and encouraging people to use a system that might seem complicated but show its benefits. Our client wanted the entire thing to be trackable in their learning management system, that every time someone watched it, and we could not do that this way. So Justin and Betty are still in my tool cabinet. They are still waiting to be used on some kind of a project. And if any one of you would like to use an idea similar to this, I mean, obviously I just made these heads from just shapes in Snagit, and it's a very primitive prototype. But I think the idea in itself is sound, as long as you don't need trackability in a learning management system. And that's the last example that I wanted to show you. And I'm going really, really fast. And I'm sorry, I'm not the most experienced speaker in the world. So let's see, go forward in my notes here. Next thing we're going to look at is we've really been looking at more online learning, which is the specialty of my company. And you know, probably if you've been in some kind of soft skills, especially training, where in instructor-led training you would be working through a case study or having a role play, and you can use scenarios like that. But you can actually use a much more almost an e-learning design in scenarios, even in an instructor-led class. And this is an example of that. And this is just PowerPoint. This is just made in PowerPoint with a character photo. Here we have an a question. And oh, look, Adobe Connect. Oh, well. These round red things are not supposed to be over top of the letters. It's supposed to be saying A, B, and C, and D. And I was going to ask you which one you would like me to pick. So if you would like to please type the A, B, C, or D into the chat, tell me what you think a wrong answer would be. I'm sorry, I need a wrong answer for this question. So Amber is excited to use better images. Where should she look first for her cutout figures? Okay, let's pick A. Several people are just saying A. That's good. Now and you probably won't be able to see this because you can't see my actual real cursor, but the red dot there next to the A is actually an active link. It's just a linked shape. I click it, and it takes me to a screen where we see the answer. We see that it's wrong, and Amber doesn't look very happy. So then down here at the bottom, we have a big button that says try again. And so I actually click that, and it takes me back to the screen where we were at before. And let's see. Well, we'll pick another wrong answer. All right, let's pick this one. Yes, that also is not correct. So, and this is literally PowerPoint, and other than the alignment of the bullets here, which I apologize for, we thought we fixed that. It even works in Adobe Connect as well. So you can have a simple little story, and just by clicking on shapes, you can do something very similar to e-learning right in an instructor-led training class. And it could be about any topic at all. And I think this is really fun, and it adds a little different dynamic to the class. And I kind of was curious as far as what you guys thought. Had you ever seen anything like this before? And do you think that that it would add something to the class? Could you guys type that in the chat for me?
Well, lots of people are typing. That's
very good.
That's good.
I just think, it's very simple to do, and I think it's a little bit, it mixes it up a little bit. It's something that people maybe wouldn't expect. One or two of these in the middle of a class. Excellent. Thank you guys all for your comments. And so pilfer all this, please. This is why we're here today. I think that let's see. Yes, Vicki has already typed e-learning art. The amber figure here is from e-learning art. I think it's elearningart.com, but the URL is in the chat already. And they are an excellent source. This is from their free image pack, which they send out, just to anybody who asks, or maybe it's even, available as a free download in their site. But if you need images of a character for a course or a series of documentation that you're doing, what they offer is for like $70 or $80, you have 100 different shots of the same character. You have them smiling, you have them confused, you have them unhappy, you have them from the side, you have them from the back, you have them sitting down, you have them standing up, and just all, with their just a headshot or a full figure with their arms and hands in different positions. And really, for $70 or $80, our clients love this because we can use the same character in a continuing story throughout their course, little one-screen scenarios, and use the same character and the same image quality. So there are a couple of different companies that do this, but e-learning art was the first. All right. Has anybody here used e-learning art before? And did you have a good experience with it? Well, good. Now that's I found several different ones, but I think for e-learning at least, and I could imagine for any presentation where you wanted to use a single character in multiple different poses, that would be good. You can also in iStock, a lot of times they'll have a person's face with different facial expressions, but you don't usually have the full character, and it'd be more expensive. Now let's go on and talk about using scenarios in assessments, because scenario-based assessments have a lot of value. This is a typical assessment question. Just a member of your team has been leaving an hour early, though they come in at the regular time. What should you do? At the end of the course, where you've learned about dealing with trouble employees, maybe a soft skill course for managers, and then you just have to confront them, refer them to employee assistance, or dock their pay. And then, that's just the question. And that is what the person has been learning in the course that they probably just took. But they could just memorize it, and memorize the course content and answer this question. And that's not always a good measure of whether they will be able to use the information on the job when a situation really comes up. So let's try it a different way. We make a story. We give the guy a name, Jake. And if it's within a course like a knowledge check, you can actually put in a photo. Now, if your test was inside the learning management system, you would not be able to use the photo. But having the photo is kind of a nice touch if you can. And he's telling us, like, oh, yes, he's worked for your team, and he started leaving early. He doesn't seem focused. You don't see anything about his family anymore. And you ask him into your office, and when he arrives, he seems distracted, and he fidgets. Now, how do you start the conversation? And then you have 3 different answers of things that you can say. And the trick with this kind of an assessment question is not just making the story, but not making it so that one answer is the right answer and the other 2 are ridiculous. It's very easy to write ridiculous answers. But what you're trying to see is whether the learner can differentiate between several answers that really sound like it could be the one. And do they really understand your company policies? or are they just kind of going on what their own gut feeling and common sense might be? So this kind of an assessment is, it gives a great deal more value, and it does show more of how the person would use their new knowledge in an on-the-job situation. I also wanted to point out that this, I don't know if any of you guys recognize this image, but it is from the Hogan Derailers videos, and Vicki's going to put that URL also into the chat. And that's not necessarily, it's just something that you can look at on your own time. There's a series of 10 different characteristics like enthusiastic or lazy or something like that, and they've got like a 1-minute video of the person saying, well, yeah, I know that other people, yeah, I feel like I give my all to the company, and then this guy, he's shown sleeping at his desk, and they're pretty funny. It's soft skills type training. Well, let's talk a little bit now about planning and writing scenarios. You always want to thoroughly plan out whatever you're going to do. You want to create a wireframe, and most of us through TechCom we're familiar with wireframes, or for usability or something. You can use a mind map. You can use a simple sketch. You can use sticky notes pasted on the wall or on your desk. You can use a whiteboard. Do any of you use mind mapping software right now? And if you do, if you'd like to type into the chat the name of the tool that you use. Yeah, I like FreeMind too, James. Yeah. That's there's a couple of different. I used to use FreeMind. Right now, I've started using XMind, which has a little bit more functionality. And Vicki's going to type into the chat. She's going to paste in a few of the tools. I think that most of them are free. XMind is the one that I use, and FreeMind, there's the link to that. MindMeister has the added value that it actually it is a cloud-based tool, and you can access it from both a PC and a tablet. So you can work on it on your iPad and then at your desk at work and whatnot. So it's also another nice tool. I think it's not very expensive. I think the PC version might be free, and the iPad in the iTunes store is maybe $1 or something. So that's another good one to use. But anyway, you want to plan out the whole, especially if you have branching, you want to plan out the whole branching sequence. From here, I'm going to show you the storyboard formats that my company uses when we're doing branching scenarios, and we just created these. So this is not like it's an official thing. We created them for our own use, and I'll be happy to provide the files to anybody who would like them. This is a simple Word document, and we have up here a setup where it describes what the challenge is, and the notes columns is usually for our programmers, because we have a staff of programmers that support us as instructional designers. And here's the challenge. Here's like Gladys is late to work, and you can, if you want to, like describe her facial expression. The blue-colored lines are the correct path, and it tells what number to go to. You can see here this is number 1, and number 3 is down here. The go-to is actually a word style, and so the person, these would be their choices. Here we have a fail, retry. We have a go to 2. We have success. So it's just a little branching scenario, and I have had some feedback from other people who've used this format, and they do like it. They like it that it's not automatic numbering, so that if you do have edits, you don't have to necessarily go back and change everything. You would just have to maybe change some of it. But Word is the one tool that allows, when you send a storyboard to the client or to your reviewer, that they can actually do track changes and put in their own changes. If you do a storyboard in PowerPoint, you do not have it. It certainly looks better, and the person will find it easier to imagine what it's going to look like. But there is not a track changes facility that actually works in PowerPoint. To go along with the Word format here, we also supplement that with a Visio diagram that gives the whole flow. And it just basically has a couple of words from what would have been that line over here. And this gives the reviewer a bird's eye view of how the learner will work through the scenario. And typically what I do is I'll paste this into the Word document someplace right above where this would start, so they know what they're going to be seeing. And this is in Visio, and this also I will provide to anybody who asks, and my email will be at the end of the presentation, so you guys can get in contact with me. I wanted to ask those of you who have used scenarios, I know it's only just a couple of you, but do you have storyboard formats or formats for writing scenarios that you have really liked that have made things easier or harder for you? Does anybody in the session have something to share? I'll give you guys a couple of minutes because that might be kind of complicated typing. I'm not seeing anything. Okay, well, that's okay. This is why you're here, and enjoy sharing what we've done so far. There are definitely a lot of different methods, and this seems to work for us. Next, I'm going to show you an online tool. BranchTrack is actually a cloud-based scenario design tool. It is so it is out there in the cloud. It can be used for either design or actual publication. It enables extremely complex branching. This that we saw earlier in this session, as well as our example here that you remember, they are both created in BranchTrack. When you go into it, you create your scenario. You can choose characters, you choose backgrounds, and I am going to log into the actual BranchTrack, so we'll see this live. And once you're completed, it will output to a SCORM-compatible file that can be housed within Captivate or Storyline or any other tool, or it can be housed directly in a learning management system. And this is a wonderful, wonderful tool. The drawbacks are that it is, and I need to tell you also, my boss just told me this, that the latest version of BranchTrack, this whole diagram right here, the whole branching diagram that would have all the text in it, they now have a capability where you can export that as a Word file and you just save it, and then you can email that to your reviewers so they can they can log in because you have a login. They can log in and then they look at basically a version of the live course, and then they also have your Word file where they can put in their track changes. So this is a lovely functionality. The drawback, one of the drawbacks, is that this is Sergey. He's in Latvia, and he invented this, and the servers are in Latvia. So if you are if you're doing a course where your customer, whether internal or external, would be comfortable in having their information on a server in Latvia, it is password protected and it's very secure, but I can imagine the Department of Defense is not going to be down with that. But if you're creating a course in how to use Twitter or change management, something where the information is more generic, this is a wonderful option. So now I'm going to go out to BranchTrack. Actually, I'll turn off the little arrow thing first. BranchTrack, and then I need to change the way I'm sharing. Stop sharing. Share my screen. Share my screen so that you guys will actually see. All right.
Okay, we see
Now,
your desktop now.
Can you see that? And you can see my cursor actually running around? Okay, good.
Yes.
So this is their one of the 3 examples that is available on the BranchTrack site. And no, they're not paying me or anything, but at Cinecraft, we're very excited about this tool. And you can go there and poke around and actually create a couple of courses for free. The paid version has a lot more functionality. But you can see you have your character photo, your progress meter or satisfaction bar over here, the question, and she says, okay, what do you want? This is an airport and you're trying to sell this lady something. It's like, okay, well, I know you have money that you can invest, so let's pick that one. And oh, she is not happy with that. So it is telling us we can continue, and I think are you kidding me? And I'm sorry, please give me another chance. And it goes back to the beginning. And if you choose the correct answer, then you go forward through the scenario. So what we really want to see here is over here, see how it is made. And this will show you that big branching structure. Let's see, I'm going to scroll out so we can see the whole thing, and I'm just using that with my mouse wheel. So this is how it would look. This is the flag means that's where you start, and 3 is where we were at when we came into this view. I have on another, this is the same thing. I just already had it at a different magnification. But if I wanted to make changes to this, you open it up. Right there's your text editor. Can make any changes, can take one of these away. Now this is their example, so I don't want to make any changes. You can see this little linky thing. Okay, this is where we're linking out to one of the other parts of the course. Excuse me, one of the other parts of the scenario. It is extremely easy and intuitive to use. Over here are the controls where you say whatever their comments, what background you want to use. The one thing about, one of the things about BranchTrack is that when you're creating it, these numbers here that you can see, here's a 1, here's a 2, here's a 3, those are strictly the order that you write the thing in. So if you get down to the bottom and you go back up to the top, you can see that this one here is a 5. Even though it really kind of probably should be either a 2 or a 3 because it's up towards the top. That's just how it was created, and you cannot change those numbers. So it really isn't that important. Sometimes we've had to tell our customers, just don't worry about those. Those aren't important. They're just there for our use. That they don't have. Sometimes that they were getting confused. So and that really is all I wanted to show you about BranchTrack. So I'm going to go back to the share thing again and say stop sharing and go back to our presentation.
And there we are. Great.
And that also means that I can see the chat. And because while I was on my own screen, I couldn't see your chat. So I really don't know how much it costs. I think it's available as a subscription, either monthly or annual. I know my company, we were one of the early adopters, so we might have a lower cost. But you can probably try it for, I would think, only maybe $100 or $200. But really, to go there and get a free login and start poking around, you will be able to make your own. I think you're limited to three courses, so you can't have hundreds. You have to use the characters and the backgrounds that they have, whereas if you pay, you can upload your own background, your own character photos, and you can also add audio. So those three things are not available in the free version. And he updates it all the time. I will say I was very careful to take you to the example. When you go to his website, if you see, it'll look like a child riding a tricycle. That is the real thing, and that it must be his son or something. And he does have a point. Say it's just like riding a bike. It's just a new way of creating training. So it's not that difficult. So there is a point to the little guy riding the tricycle. I thought maybe I was on the wrong website. He updates it, and he's a very, very responsive, excellent customer service. I mean, we've emailed him with a question, and like within an hour or two, even from Latvia, he's emailing us back answers. And he does take a lot of suggestions as far as improvements to the tool. So check it out. I definitely highly recommend it. At least for informal things. I know that there are things that it would not be good for. So let's proceed on, now that we've looked at our nice BranchTrack, back to our planning and writing. The number one challenge, as I think we kind of mentioned before, is creating the believable wrong answers. I mean, it is easy to create answers that are absolutely ridiculous. But to have ones that actually make the person stop and think, that is a little harder. So where we want to do is right here, our SME input is absolutely key because they can tell you where the problems really are. What mistakes do people really make? And, of course, traditional TACCOM sources, your help desk tickets, user or customer complaints, those are also very good sources as far as finding believable wrong answers. I am needing to go to my other screen and scroll down. It does not want me to. Oh, there we go. All right, there we go. Back to it. The challenges to scenario-based designs are sometimes the subject matter experts don't understand why you need the wrong answers, and they really don't want to give them to you. So sometimes you need to explain it to them what the value is. If that people are, that will keep your learners from making those mistakes in real life. Then we also have the challenge of the subject matter experts saying, I'm just having trouble visualizing it from the storyboards. Because if what you have is, that Word document with all the different, the charts and the lines of stuff, and even with a flow chart, a lot of times what I'll do is I will also put a mock-up that I just make in PowerPoint with some character photo or a stock image. And I will make a mock-up of what at least one or two screens will look like to give them a little bit more of a comfort zone that they can be able to visualize what it will look like. But that is, especially on a scenario that's long and very branching, like that one chart that I showed you or like that negotiator, it can be hard for reviewers to imagine. Another challenge that we find a lot of times is that the reviewers or the subject matter experts will feel that by allowing the learners to select wrong answers, we're actually reinforcing choosing wrong answers, and we're teaching them errors. And that is oftentimes another kind of made a little different slant on the first one that we just saw here. Oh, okay. Okay, thanks, Nina. I'm glad you're still there with us. So we've been teaching. Told that we're teaching them errors, and then this guy. I know you guys know this guy. The course needs to include everything. No, we have to put everything in the documentation. The help file has to include every possible thing that could happen. And the good thing about scenario-based training in the e-learning is that just like that example that we saw pretty early on with the finger stick, we noticed that down in the right-hand column, you actually had access. You could open a popover window with a quick reference guide, the actual standard procedure, even video content, but you can offer that as a support to the learner and have those things be the same thing that they will use on the job, so that when they're answering the questions, they are, if they on the job they would need to go to a quick reference guide, well, they're doing the same thing right in the course. And it once again is simulating their real world actions. So that is how we respond to Mr. needs to include everything down here. Another question that sometimes we will get is, how will they know if the training works? Sometimes scenario-based training does not include traditional assessments. Sometimes our clients are saying, well, if it's especially a branching scenario with 3 or 4 different paths and they can work through that, they have shown that they know how to respond to customers or respond to complaints in the correct way. So we will count that as the assessment. And this really, ideally, if you're creating training because the business has a need. They're losing money because people are doing things the wrong way, because people don't know the information they're supposed to give to the customer, because the people are choosing the wrong product to sell. And so that is the reason that the training is needed in the first place. And just like in technical documentation, you say, okay, well, we know that the documentation is working because there's fewer help desk tickets, or there's fewer crashes, or there's fewer data entry errors. That's the same way. And in the learning sphere, what you're doing at that point is you're measuring it at what they call a Kirkpatrick level 3 or 4. Not just a Kirkpatrick level 1 or 2, where it's simply have they memorized what they've seen on the screens in the course. So this is actually, it's a very good measure of what the people can do really on the job when they can work through a scenario that recreates a on-the-job situation. Now, what we have is, I promised you guys an activity. And I don't know if you guys have seen this before, but this is the lovely DOT Chart 13. This is the page 2 of the 3-page PDF, which is created by the United States government. And when I showed this in a live session, people just groaned because they said, oh, the information design. That's exactly what people were saying. And but it actually has quite a lot of information on there if you do read that, and it's blurry because it's in a presentation. But what we're going to do is we're going to go from this lovely technical information, and we're going to create a scenario from it. And I would like you guys to choose one of these placards. Yeah, you can leave that right where it was, Vicki. That's fine. They don't need to be able to see them. And just in the poll, just make a selection of what you would like to use for this scenario. Would you like to use explosives, flammable, inhalation, or corrosive? Yes, Sylvia, absolutely. Pack every inch of that with information. And that's only one of the 3 pages. They're all like that. Looks like explosives is winning out. Oh, there we go. All right. Okay. Well, I think we probably should just go ahead with.
We've got 5 votes.
Yeah,
everybody, don't be shy.
Yeah, we have a couple of more people typing in the chat, so they might not be able to. The clicking might not be working for them. So, all right, let's go with explosives.
And poll.
And poll.
And okay.
And we're going to be typing in the chat here. So, all right, I'm going to click the explosives one. That's what we've selected. So let's make a story that's about whether or not the goal for the learner, well, what would who is going to be our learner? Let's do that first. We have a couple of different things. Is it going to be the truck driver? Is it going to be the shipping clerk? Is it going to be an emergency responder? What would you guys type it? Go ahead and type in the chat. What do you think? Ooh, Greg, that's hardcore. Okay. I'm thinking I have a vote for. I don't know what we're going to do with militia experts. So I think let's go with between driver and fireman. Somebody give me a third vote here. Okay, we've got a couple of more people. Construction. Got another one for the driver. Ace Hardware employee, oh my goodness, sorry. Can be a driver of an Ace Hardware truck. I don't know that they sell explosives. I don't know that they do.
Yeah, we've seen MacGyver. I know all that stuff is explosive in there, right?
Oh, I don't know. It might be. Well, fertilizer might be. You know, if it's a truck filled with fertilizer, it definitely might be. Okay, well, let's go, yeah, propane, exactly, yeah. All right, so let's go with the person is, the learner is a truck driver, and what we want him to do is to be able to select the correct placard to put on the back of his truck. So what would the story be if the correct answer for him is going to be explosives? You guys are more dangerous than other people have always chosen flammable. So you guys are definitely more dangerous than
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. Yes, or we could be choosing from the four that were shown before. So we could definitely be choosing from the 4 explosives ones, or we could be, where is my cursor? There it is. We could be choosing from that, flammable, inhalation, and corrosive. So that would probably be a little easier. Let's go back to that one. So those would be the 4 answers. So if you're the learner is the truck driver, and the question is, okay, I'm sorry, you guys. I think this is once again an experiment. I think this is a little harder for us to do over the phone and in the online format. So let's say that, here we've got, he's picking up his load for the day, and he's told, yeah, he's told he's carrying hazardous materials. That's very good. That's perfect, because he would have to be given a bill of lading for what was on his truck. So in this, for the question, what we would have is we would show the bill of lading, and in the bill of lading it gives the listing of all of any hazmat that's in that load, like the person who is made the shipment and that the driver is picking it up, the company that's shipping it out has to provide that to him. So he would be looking down that list, and he would be looking for, and then we would give him these four choices of what he picks. Now, what would be, I see Greg is typing still. I don't want to cut anybody off, so let's see what he's doing. Yep, exactly. And we could also give him the SOP. We could have that as well, so that we give them the bill of lading with the question, which of these 4 hazmat placards needs to be in the back of your truck, and we can also provide him with the procedure that they can refer to, him or her. I shouldn't say just him or her, because there's plenty of female truck drivers and with any kind of load, and so that they can look up. And we can also maybe possibly even provide them with this DOT Chart 13, the whole thing. So then they choose. Now, if they choose explosives, that's the correct answer. What would we have happen? What would be the consequence if they chose, let's say, what if they chose flammable? What could we have as the consequence for that if they chose that answer? Make it up. Make it wild. You put it into a tank. You mean the material itself?
Yeah.
Yeah. You mean the explosive material? I would imagine it would
I think
probably
they would
be.
try to do the wrong thing with it.
Yeah, you think they would try to do their own thing with it? Yeah, that could be. Yeah. The person would, if I was a learner and I looked down that bill of lading and I chose flammable as my answer when it should have been explosives, then
there's a difference. Yeah.
There is a big difference.
Yeah.
And what could eventually happen? You know, that I put the flammable thing on the back of my truck and I drive off. He's in an accident, perfect, and the emergency responders do not know how to handle the load property, and there's an explosion and people are injured. Yes, that is totally it. So that's the perfect example of how this is a scenario. This is technical information. Exactly, Nina, something is going to blow up. So we have, the person can see the consequence. If you choose the wrong one, then that's what's really going to happen in real life. And then we could maybe allow them to take another guess, or go in through and work this one question scenario again, or we could just go on to tell them what information that what the answer should have been and why. So that's just a little bit of an example of how this format can be used for this kind of technical information. And it really can be used for, let's see, I need to go there, and then I need to go the next one. They could also be fined by the EPA, even if there's not an explosion. So there's a lot of, it's like, what would happen in real life? What would be a worst-case scenario? And once again, this is something that you would ask your subject matter expert about. You guys are so sharp, because I didn't even have to remind you that you can have resources. They're available on the screen, the SOPs and different quick reference guides. Okay, we're coming to the end here. So I wanted to tell you guys where you can go to learn more about scenario-based design. This is probably the biggest expert that I rely on, Kathy Moore, and her Making Change blog. And I kind of would like to know if any of you have follow her or are familiar with her work at all. Raise hand or type yes in the chat, whichever is easier to you. Oh, Nina, I see you know Kathy Moore. She's actually from Indiana. And here's a great story. We're here in Ohio. And I told my chapter about 5 or 6 years ago, we should have Kathy Moore come in and talk to us, and she would have done it for the price of a dinner. And right now she lives in Hong Kong, and she flies all over the world. And I'm thinking, well, we're not going to get her for the price of a dinner now. So, yeah, she's just got so much. And she taught the scenario class, the most recent one that I had taken. And it is very, very worthwhile. She usually offers a United States one, a Europe one, and I think an Australia, Asia one. And we had to sign up for the Europe one because the United States one filled up so fast. But it's extremely, extremely worthwhile. So her blog URL will be in the chat, and it's also in the article on my chapter newsletter that I put up there. The next person that I wanted to direct you to is Ray Jimenez, and I've taken 2 classes from him. You can see right now he has his website is Vignettes Learning. He has a story-based technical and compliance e-learning design workshop that he offers sometimes. This right here is an old screenshot from 2014, but he does offer that from time to time. Tons of useful information on his blog, and he's a very, very engaging speaker. The Negotiator example was from his class. Another expert that we saw earlier is Carl Kapp, and his blog, he actually he's the head of the Bloomsburg University Instructional Design Department, and I believe you can get a master's, if not a PhD, in instructional design from them, and it is an online course, so you don't even have to be there. But his blog contains a lot of great information about scenarios and also a lot on gamification. I think he's the one that started that whole trend towards gamification. The last one I wanted to show you is the course that I have not taken. This is from ASTD or ATD, their new initials. I'm so glad we're still STC, but they changed theirs. But anyway, they have this class, and it is taught by Ruth Colvin Clark. And it's interesting when I presented this this session to my chapter, I said, well, I know that all of these thought leaders over here, they really rely on Ruth Colvin Clark, but I have found her stuff very difficult to read and understand. And one of the ladies in our meeting said that, well, Ruth Colvin Clark is very much an academic, so she is writing for an academic audience. So that probably is why I had a little more trouble with it. But as I said, everybody else, all the gurus I follow, they rely on her a lot. And there are many more. I mean, if you Google, scenario-based instructional design, I mean, it's like a gazillion hits. But this is enough to get you started in the right direction. And in conclusion, if we think about it, we all learn best from our own mistakes. Scenarios allow our learners to practice their actual on-the-job behaviors and to use trial and error like you do in every other area of your life. But there are no consequences to the business because they're in a virtual environment, so they can learn from their mistakes in a safe and controlled way. And that is the end of my little presentation. I think I'm just about on time here. And here is a bunch of my contact information, which Vicki has also pasted. And the chat window here is not allowing us any nice formatting and stuff, so that's the best that we could do, but at least it's there for you. Now, I don't know, I didn't see any questions from you guys as we went along, but if you have anything that you would like me to answer right now, please type it in the chat. You can also go back and forth through email later. And Vicki has also pasted in the URL. I put an article on my chapter's monthly newsletter on our website that has many of the links, not all of the links, but many of them that you have seen in the chat window today.
Well, thank you, Kim. I'm gonna stop the recording, and we will keep the discussion going. But I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay.